I get to do the song and dance to tell you thank you for coming to the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs. I just want to say a couple things. My boss, Dr. Michael O. Adams, could not be here. He had a conflict. We have a couple of different groups in town tonight, and we're trying to cover ground. I dumped the city council members because I used to be a city council member, so I know if I really need to get the deal done, I had to be with the city managers, because I know that's who got the real power in local government. The people just don't know that. They just send the council members and the mayors thinking they're in charge. My job is to introduce and welcome all of you, and in a second, Anthony Snipes, but I want to share this with you. We are at an incredible crossroad times in America, and it turns out that cities are going to be the place that all the innovation and progress will take place in the country over the next several years. And it's a weird circumstance because cities are creatures of the state, so technically they aren't recognized in the formal federalist process. But in fact, if you look at America now, cities are really what drive the states as opposed to states driving the cities in terms of economic engines, in terms of policy solutions. So it is always a good thing to have here in the building city managers from across the country, especially those of you who are in partnership with the NFBPA. I think I may still be a dues-paying members of NFBPA. If I am not, it's their fault, because they have to learn how to be like all those other creditors. They send you a thing, you pay it, and maybe you overpay, and then they tell you you have a credit. I'm a member of the Texas Association of Black City Council member because I'm a past city council member. I saw Courtney Johnson Rose come in. I got to give a shout out because Courtney is a chair now of the Black Chamber. I'm a past chairman of the Black Chamber. I'm just saying that because city managers have to understand that black entrepreneurs have to survive also. And for some weird reason, and I'll do this last one, Anthony, and I appreciate you when you had Dr. Adams and I come down. And I told this story to the city council members because they, like city managers, will understand this. So I retired from city government, got talked back into elected office, ran for the Houston Community College Board. The city of Houston passed a piece of legislation in Austin called Hire Houston First. So basically, if you were a business in Houston, you would get a preference, Tracy, to get a contract in the city. So I had the really great idea that I would mimic what the city had done. I got the board of trustees at the Houston Community College to put it on our legislative agenda. We went to Austin, we got a bill filed, and then people showed up and said I was trying to secretly manipulate the procurement process. And so I understand how hard it is for you to explain to people that because somebody is trying to grow into helping to make your community a better place, it is not a manipulation of the process. And a lot of the city council members will need your help and guidance to get through that process. So welcome. We are a resource. We will help city managers and NFBPA with graduate students, research assistants. And last thing, we just bought the software to do redistricting in 2021. We have a 2020 census project. So the last year and a half, we've been talking to city council members, the city of Houston, and other places to try to encourage them to get their communities ready and organized for the 2020 census, because usually the people who are undercounted are people of color or low income, large overlap, and unfortunately, this 2020 census may be in worse shape structurally than the 2010 census, and that will have significant impact on your local budgets if we don't get folks counted. So we want to work with you on that, and we also want to work with you city managers and your city council. We bought the software because when I went to Austin and worked for Rodney Ellis, the first time we did it, Bob Bullock was light governor. We redistricted with paper maps on the conference table with highlighters. We're a little bit more sophisticated now, And we don't think you have to wait till the actual census numbers. You can start looking at the permutations. So the School of Public Affairs, we will feed you, we will educate the young people you can hire, and we will provide you professors not only to do reviews of paper, but also to provide you with expertise in urban planning, administration of justice, public administration, emergency planning, and homeland security. That's what we teach, and we send you well-trained and prepared people in all those aspects. So welcome to Texas Southern University, 10,500 students strong, the largest HBCU. We were started out of a mistaken mindset, but we've grown into the great university that manifests excellence in achievement. Thank you very much. City Manager down the road, my good friend, Anthony Snipes.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is indeed an honor to be back at the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs. When I think of this school, I think of excellence. I think of students that have so much before them, and individuals that preceded you are doing wonderful things in communities across this country. So my hat goes off to the excellence of this school. One of the things that I wanted to do is really just give you some ideas of how we plan to proceed. I have a list of questions here, but really tonight is about you. And we may reflect and go back on asking some of these questions, but I want you to be thinking about, as I introduce the panel for tonight's discussion, questions that are important that you may want to ask these individuals. We have individuals from small cities, medium-sized cities, large cities that have a wide variety of experiences, and I think ultimately tonight is really an opportunity for you to engage them and to ask questions that are relevant to you. So what I want to do is to introduce the panel, and they've been a part of our Leadership Now Symposium, which started today. They are here, a number of them, as part of our National Board of Directors, which will be meeting in Sugar Land, Texas for the remaining days through Sunday. And we're very, very, very happy to have them to be in the greater Houston area, not only to handle the business of NFBPA, but also to engage and to grapple with issues that are relevant to our communities. Our first panelist that I would like to call to be seated is Mr. Harry Black. Mr. Black is the city manager for the city of Cincinnati. Harry is, thank you. Harry is recognized, or is a recognized champion of change and innovation, who focuses on transforming organizations by applying best practices and outcome-based strategies. His extensive career includes leadership roles in both the public and the private sector. In his current role as Cincinnati City Manager, and he's held that position since 2014, Harry is responsible for the day-to-day operations of city government. He serves as the chief administrator for the city and its 6,300 employees. He is committed to build a customer-centric workforce and responsible, effective economic development policies and practices that support job growth and economic opportunities for all of the individuals living in Cincinnati. If you would, help me welcome Mr. Harry Black. Our next panelist is Mr. David Cook. And I know a lot about the cities because I worked there for 7 years. But David Cook became Fort Worth city manager on June 30th, 2014, following a national search. With extensive experience in high-growth urban areas, Cook has provided a myriad of local government services to the city of Charlotte and Wake County, both in North Carolina. His experience includes managing large public organizations with growing capital infrastructure and daily public service needs. The city of Charlotte is approaching 800,000 in population, and Wake County is approaching 1 million citizens. When you think about and look at a large number of Mr. Cook's successes, you can see not only has he worked, as I stated earlier, in the public sector, but the private sector as well. He's been instrumental in leading 13 successful bond referenda and helped recruit companies like Fidelity, MetLife, and others to his communities. If you would, help me join in welcoming Mr. David Cook. Our next panelist is an individual that I started many, many years ago when I joined NFBPA. We came in as graduate students, and that was so many years ago.
Yesterday.
See the gray now. But Aretha Farrah Benavides has been a staple in NFBPA in a number of communities. In recently, July 10th of 2017, she was appointed the city manager for the city of Petersburg, Virginia. As city manager, she's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city and reports directly to the city council. She has over 25 years of professional experience at all levels of government. Prior to becoming the city manager in the city of Petersburg, she served as the city manager to the city of Glen Lakes, which is here in Texas, since May 19th of 2015. When you look at her extensive resume, she's worked with the District of Columbia. She's also held a number of other positions in New Mexico, and we're so happy to have her. She recently received the Premier Award, Marks of Excellence Award with NFBPA, so we're very happy to have her to join this panel this evening. Give her a round of applause. Our next panelist will be Rashad Young. Mr. Young, not understand, someone told me, when you think about traffic congestion, Houston and D.C., but he will be joining us momentarily, but I'm going to go ahead and read his resume. He was appointed the chief city administrator of the District of Columbia on January 2015. He has a workforce of about 35,000 employees and a budget of nearly $13 billion. Mr. Young is charged with ensuring efficient and accountable, well-managed service delivery to all residents, businesses, and visitors on behalf of the mayor. His focus really, based on some of the information and discussions we've had, has been on improving the district government's operations and oversight, providing for continuous quality improvements in government programs and services, and ensuring responsibility and transparency in the budgeting process, as well as improving interagency coordination, collaboration, and communication. So he will join us momentarily, but while he's en route, we have an opportunity to engage you. So before I get to the questions that I've prepared, I want to throw it out for us to have some rapid-fire questions with these dynamic city managers that are here today. So are there any questions from the audience at this time? Any questions? Okay, I guess you guys want to warm up. So one of the things that I learned many years ago. Oh, we have one? Okay, go ahead. Well, it's the Executive Masters of Public Administration. Executive Masters of Public Administration. Go ahead, sir.
How do you guys manage dealing with the counties or other local governments that are using your services, yet you have to pay for them? What kind of partnerships have you been able to create to help balance that out and share the responsibilities?
Here.
Luckily for us in Cincinnati, they have to come to me for services, primarily water and sewer services. We provide water and sewer services for multiple counties, including the city of Cincinnati. The county in which we're located in is Hamilton County, Ohio. We do more things together than we don't do things together. When you're an urban local government, it's somewhat of a challenge, particularly when that urban local government has a very significant minority population. The dynamic is a little different in terms of the relationship between city, county, and even the region. You get a lot of things done, but you end up having to do some dancing along the way to get to the finish line. So it requires trying to be smart as much as possible, patient and tolerant, but yet constantly focused on the pursuit of trying to make your jurisdiction the best place that it can be.
I'll add whoa. Try that. Can everybody hear me? No. I think it starts with focusing on there's more areas where we do cooperate than where we don't. And then I think it goes to just somebody asking questions. And my reflection would be in North Carolina, there's a lot more of consolidated services between cities and counties than exist in Texas. So where I'm from Fort Worth, it's Tarrant County. There are 41 municipalities in that county, so that's a lot. But do we need 41 library systems, 41 parks and recreation departments? There's one park and recreation department in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, right? There's one library system in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. And so I think it requires people just to ask basic questions that leave people with, well, that doesn't make sense, right? And it does have to come, I believe, from the community that wants more effective and efficient government. The governments aren't going to necessarily do it to themselves. So to me, it's got to be a community conversation about how can we provide services more effectively and efficiently. That leads to more coordination and consolidation. Oh, there we go.
The city of Petersburg is unique in Virginia. We are an independent city, so that means that we are not a member of any county. So we provide both city services and county services, and so most of our relationships, intergovernmental, are some of our regional partnerships. We have a combined water district and sewer district, and within that, part of that cooperation is the way it's established is that we have equal votes. What we find is our intergovernmental cooperation focuses on some of the things that we have in common, but when you get to economic development, you find that you're all competing for those scarce resources. And so our ability to work together as a regional organization is very important. When it comes to economic development projects, some will come to our city, some will come to the county, and our counties and cities are interchangeable in some ways. What we find, though, is that it takes a lot of communication. And it also focuses on what's best for Petersburg versus what's best for Chesterfield County or what's best for Dinwiddie or Hopewell. And so it's a unique opportunity for us as a city to build on some of the partnerships that we have with our regional groups.
What do you guys consider to be the top issues? Okay.
Question.
No question. Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Chicago, and we have a mayor system. Where does so the city manager is a little different concept. Where does public education fit in your job description?
So that's a great tie-in to how Petersburg is. It's very different than any place. I used to work for the city of Chicago, and it's like Chicago. The school district, the school board was once appointed by the city. Currently, in Texas, where the school boards have taxing authority, they don't. And so within Petersburg, the school is completely dependent on us to give them funding. They have no budgeting authority, so we must approve their budget, and all of the other functions, and so it creates a partnership. One of the unique challenges we have is that our city is only as successful as our school district, and so when our funding's short, so is their funding. And so building those together, it's very much like the city of Chicago structure, where the mayor appoints a school board and they have a lot of oversight in our community. As a city manager, that's not typical for city managers, because in most of, I think, my adjoining jurisdictions, they're independent school districts, whereas they're not independent school districts in an independent school district within the city of Petersburg.
So I'm back to the original question before. So we only have 16 school districts in Fort Worth. So you can start with that question again, is do we need 16 school districts in Fort Worth? But I think what is occurring in cities around the country is, as you've mentioned, education is so important. Education, you have to think about the workforce of the future, whether we're developing it or not locally. And there's a lot of attention on improving schools for long-term economic development, prosperity of an entire community. So in the city of Fort Worth, our mayor and council have an initiative with the primary school district, Fort Worth ISD, to improve reading by 3rd grade as just one basic element where the city can help. The city runs 16 or 17 libraries. We run rec centers with after-school programs. We run community centers. So the city does have a role in improving education for the community. So it is, I think we have to look at it as it is part of our job to work with the school districts to do this for a long-term benefit.
In Cincinnati, unlike other places that I've been, the mayor, city council, city manager really has no involvement with the school system, other than when we're doing our economic development deals and we're doing tax abatements to make certain that we don't mess with their piece of that taxing component. I think that I don't know how this is going to happen. I think about it a lot. Public education, particularly urban public education, is sort of at a crossroads, and I don't think that they're going to be able to do this thing by themselves. They're going to need help. How do we get them that help? How do they ask for that help? How do they accept that help? That's the real fundamental question. How do we get to a point of mutual trust and collaboration? And I think that is the ultimate challenge as it relates to particularly urban public education today.
Well, I got a follow-up. Can I have a
Sure,
follow-up
go
to that
ahead.
question for all? In terms of still on public education, what role do you see the federal government playing in public education at the local level?
I think the federal government's role, period, should be that of an enabler. You know, provide funding and make laws and policies that enable public education to be optimized in every way. That's my viewpoint.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Since we're on the topic of public education, what measures are you all taking as far as keeping our minority students, specifically our minority males, out of the bracket of special education?
Again, I know we're at Texas Southern University. I chair the board of trustees of Virginia State University, another HBCU in Virginia, and last spring's commencement, I'm looking out at all of the graduates, and more than 2/3 of the graduates were female. And as they're coming across the stage to get their degrees, I'm saying to myself, who in the world are they going to marry? So we've got a big problem, not just in terms of special education, but in terms of black males and education, particularly higher education. And I know that there are some people who are looking at that right now, but that's in my view, a crisis situation that's going to require some very, very significant intervention. What that intervention will be, I'm not sure.
So I know that the Fort Worth ISD is looking at all kind of issues regarding equity, and how do you measure it to see if the policies you put into place create disparities from a policy standpoint. And so, I give them credit. They're going in, doing all the measurements, identifying the disparities, and then having a policy conversation about, are policies causing this that we can change so that how we measure and the results of the metrics will change over the long term. So I think it gets down to with just what you started with. What are we measuring, and how can we keep the disparities from occurring long term?
So to tie into what Harry stated, my city is one of the feeder cities. Virginia State technically lists Petersburg as their place of residence, and as he talks about the lack of males in the audience, we have a school in crisis. Our schools are underperforming, they're unaccredited, and they're struggling, and it has a stereotype toward our students and our population because they don't see themselves as valuable. But when you walk out and you see the students, you realize that they have a lot to offer. And what we've got to do is partnership with organizations like this and like Virginia State so that folks can see there is a future. When you're told that you're in an underperforming school or you're told that it's in an uncredited school, you find that the students don't see hope. A lot of the teachers are despair. They feel that they don't tell the students that you can go to college. And so one of the conversations, we have a city-school partnership, which I co-chair with the superintendent of the school, where we're starting to focus on what are the criteria, what are the things that impact achievement. And we found that there are a lot of things that socially that we haven't focused on, and we're trying to address them, whether it's health care, traumatic experiences in early childhood and things like that. And even there, when we talk about healthcare, some of the issues that they face at home. And so we've got to look at it not just as an education, but we've got to look at it from our social services level. We've got to look at the parents, and we've got to look at some of the other factors that impact their achievement, and then showing them that there is a better life. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have. When we talk about my city, and it's interesting to say that we're a population of 35,000, 14,000 of our population are in our social services program. That's over 50%. And so with a 50% rate and a historically black college of that size joining our city, something's wrong. And so we've got to change our conversation, and we've got to, as they say, meet people where they're at and talk to them about what are the things to help them to see there is a future. And that's one of the conversations we're starting to have. I created a position that we didn't have before in our city, which was a deputy city manager of community affairs, because I realized that economic development means nothing to us, education, if we're not focusing on the social needs of our community as well as from our young kids to our adults. And so that's been a focus that we've had over the past, since I've been there.
Sure.
Rashad Young, sorry I'm joining you all late. With respect to education, the district's a little different than many cities in the country. We have mayoral control over schools, which means the mayor runs the school district in the District of Columbia. The chancellor works for the executive branch of the government. And so what that means for us is that we have an ability to very quickly and in a focused way set policy, set guidelines, change curriculums, do interventions that can really make a marked difference in how our schools perform very quickly. In the district, we've had a number of strategies to address this issue of male achievement. And like most urban districts, there's a significant minority achievement gap between our minority population and boys in particular and the majority. And so we started a boys academy in the district 2 years ago, grades 7 through 12. We add a grade each year. We have a new chancellor who has experience in Oakland and Denver in bringing social emotional learning concepts and interventions in all of our schools. We're heavy on school supports and interventions for our students and for those that are at risk or at underperforming schools as well. And we've really focused on discipline and equity and how discipline is dispensed across our schools from a racial perspective and a gender perspective. And so we're wrapping all of these strategies into how we approach the issue of achievement in DCPS schools, and recognizing that it's more than just about the curriculum, but it's the quality of the teaching staff, the cultural competencies of the staff that we hire and what they bring to the table, even those policies around truancy, around discipline, around how we engage with students who have high human service needs or social service needs. And it's just a way that we try to think about delivering the educational service in the District of Columbia. And while the margin is still significant, we believe that those kinds of strategies are the ones that will impact this population in the long term.
Thank you. Let me just fail to mention that I'm standing in tonight. Our national president, who was scheduled to moderate this panel, sends her regrets. She had an emergency and had to drive back to San Antonio, but she wanted you to know that she wished she could be here, but had to go back home today. So our prayers are with her and our family. But we want to thank the panel for moving forward to be here this evening. I want to ask this question because as you look at the landscape across America, there are a large amount of issues, and every city is different. They're grappling with issues in their own space. What I would like to know from the panelists tonight is, what are the top 3 issues that you're facing in your community? And since we're here with future administrators, what are the biggest challenges you see facing the next generation of leaders in our community?
Well, I'd say for us in the district, as we think about our challenges, we have a lot to be thankful for. Population growing, revenues growing, private sector businesses locating, tech industry moving. So we have a lot of positive indicators on how our city is performing. And what I have found is, in my experience in various cities, that while I've been in cities in decline, that portends for certain challenges. Our challenge about managing growth is the issue. Affordable housing is the #1 issue in the District of Columbia and in the region surrounding the district. We don't have an ability for the middle class to be homeowners and to live and raise their family in the district. I should say that that possibility is becoming harder for people to reach. Our teachers, our firefighters, our laborers, our professional staff have a hard time living in the district because the cost is so exorbitant. Tied to that is how we manage growth. So a city that delivers 985 net new residents a month has growth challenges, as we are confined, we cannot expand, and so how we manage growth in terms of traffic and density, managing the pace of development, managing issues around gentrification are significant for us. And the third, related I think to the first two, is income disparity. And so we have one of the highest educated populations in the country, and we have one of the widest income disparities in the country as well. And so people who are doing really well live really well in D.C., but we have tens of thousands and thousands of people who are not, whose ability to earn a wage to sustain themselves and their family is in peril and is becoming harder every day. And so those are the 3 challenges that we have. Challenges, I think, for people coming into the profession and in public administration, I really believe it is the complexity of the environment that we live in, the speed with which information moves, decisions are made, criticism are leveled, expertise is brought to the table. Gone is the day where the public administrator was the expert in the room about the issue at hand. The community, the populace, the stakeholders, they're sharp, they're focused, they're informed, they're fast, and they don't have time for us to deliberate a long time to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, and they're very opinionated about what they want to see in their community. How to manage that and manage those relationships, I think, is a fundamental difference in the work that we do today than what public administrators did yesterday.
Yes. Not unlike D.C. or other places, the Midwest, as if you've been tracking the opioid crisis in the country, is a problem. It's amazing. Last year we saw about 1,700 overdoses, and where Narcan was used. Narcan is a drug that basically brings you back from the dead. When this crisis first started, 1 unit of Narcan would be sufficient if you've come across a person who's overdosed. Now it's requiring 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 units. But that's an issue. That's a national issue. We don't have a silver bullet for it, making it go away. I think it's going to be some scientists in some laboratory that creates some sort of vaccine or something that deals with the whole addiction chemical problem inside of the body. But, we just provide treatment, prevention, education, and we're going after the pharmaceuticals as well. We've just signed up with a law firm to initiate a class action lawsuit against 2 pharmaceutical entities that are primary players in how this whole thing got started in the first place. As Rashad mentioned, economic equity is critical. As he said, with the internet, e-commerce, social media, the world is moving at a breakneck speed, and it's only getting faster every day. And as a result, unfortunately, we are making advances as a society because of it, but so many people are getting left behind and will continue to get left behind. So we focus a lot on economic equity. When I got to Cincinnati, we were doing about 2% of our contracting activity went to minority firms and women-owned firms. In less than 3 years, 17% of those dollars are going to minority firms and women-owned firms. So we're looking, yes. So we're looking at leveraging our dollars and our spending to try to make a difference on the economic front. And we're doing a lot of that, some creative things on the economic development side as well. One of the things that I know that all of us are dealing with is workforce issues, which is why this building and this program and this school is so critical and vital. Most people are not aware that more than 65% of the public sector workforce, federal, state, and local, are either retirement eligible or near retirement eligible. Something serious is about to happen, and I think we're beginning to see it, particularly on the public safety side, with our police and fire, but I think that's going to spread to the rest of the workforce. So we're going to have to deal with that. We're not going to have enough of these schools pumping out enough public administration professionals. So the young lady in the back, I'm assuming she's a freshman, and whatever, she's smart, she's here in this room today, you're in the right place. There's going to be lots of opportunity, okay? Another area that we're focusing a lot of attention on is obviously community police relations. And that term is evolving as we sit here this evening. Community policing relations is changing. It's morphing into something more sophisticated. In Cincinnati, what we spend a lot of time working on, and I believe we've experienced tremendous success, is basically integrating and collaborating the enforcement side of law enforcement with non-enforcement strategies such as place-based strategies, problem solving. Most of the homicides that occur in Cincinnati, maybe 15 to 20% are drug related. The vast majority are conflict related. Individuals who just don't know how to communicate and resolve issues and to talk through issues, so they just immediately go to a gun. So we're emphasizing very innovative ways to go in and to work and make the community a part of that sort of triad approach: enforcement, place-based strategies, and problem solving. And there are a myriad of other challenges that we're all facing as well, but those are the ones that come to mind at this time.
Harry, before we go to the next panelist, I wanted to follow up with you about the increase from 2 to 3% to 12%. You know, 17. We talk about successes like that, but I would ask if you would to talk about what initiatives, what did you need to do in order to make that change so that individuals, I know that's a challenge in other cities, sometimes you don't have the fortitude and the support on the elected side of things, but what did you do as an administrator to make that happen?
In this case, we had full support of the mayor and the council. We did the first step. The first step is you must initiate a disparity study to have some sort of quantitative foundation that supports and that identifies what that disparity might be from one group to the next. We did that, and thanks to a protege of Cy Murray, and I know you're going to get to telling the group who Cy Murray is eventually, right? He's sitting right up here, right up front. Michael Rogers, who I had the opportunity to work for early in my career for the City of New York in procurement. So basically, the disparity study, we totally reformed all of our procurement policies and procedures, streamlined them. We made them more inclusive in terms of procurement methods that we would use. I established a procurement review committee that I run on a weekly basis. I've got my assistant city managers at the table. I've got my chief procurement officer. I've got my director of economic inclusion, which is a brand new position in a brand new department that we created for this purpose. And I look at every single procurement and pre-solicitation, pre-award, and we establish goals, and I push. They may recommend a 10% MBE and a 5% WBE goal. So can we do better? And that's how you do it. You have to be intentional about it. You have to be smart about it. And fortunate for me, the early part of my career was in public procurement, so I knew all of the ins and outs. And I knew all of the excuses and how to get around all of the excuses. That's the key. Just top-level commitment.
Because you go outside of the city limits to find it.
What we ended up doing, and this helped us out as well, our MWBE program is not just Cincinnati-centric. We made it all of Hamilton County, which Cincinnati is a part of, because we wanted to just optimize the possibilities for opportunities for all firms.
David, major issues.
Number one, growth. Fort Worth is growing by about 25,000 people a year. So after 4 years, that's 100,000. In 6 years, we'll be over 1 million. And so it's just where are these people going to live? Where are they going to work? How are they going to get around? And so planning that infrastructure, planning for that growth is probably first and foremost. Second issue, police and community relations. We had a bad arrest last December. We continue to work through that. We've created a race and culture task force in Fort Worth, working with National League of Cities and their race, equity, and leadership group, and those are very uncomfortable conversations, but I think are going to be very important for Fort Worth. And then the third, we've already mentioned that, workforce, not only where you have to grow and improve the existing education systems, but we also have to create a community that's attractive to young, educated adults that want to move and live in Fort Worth, again, for the same reasons that everybody's been talking about.
So in my community, we were at one time a industrial center, very similar to some of the places you see in the Midwest. We had a tobacco factory, we had an eyeglass factory. All those shut down, and all of a sudden we faced fiscal constraints. So we have a very high level of unemployment, a high level of poverty. When the factories went away, the city made decisions not to pursue other opportunities versus let them close and go away. So part of our problems, we have fiscal challenges, fiscal constraints. When I took the job, some say it was a $6 million deficit, some say it was a $20 million deficit, but a city with no fund balance. And so right now we are looking at how do you start to rebuild. Tying into this, what made this important to me is my city is 85% African American. Being that it's 85% African American, you see a population of folks that you do want to see succeed. They are still educated, but they see despair. And so I have financial constraints. From an economic development standpoint is we have land, we have space, we have businesses, we have a vibrant downtown. But you don't see that 85% African American. And so it gets you to our second challenge besides fiscal is our race issues. When the issues happened in Charlottesville, many folks said, how far away are you? Well, if you come to Petersburg, there are Confederate flags everywhere you go. And we have a true gap in communication between our African Americans. I believe that one of the things you see often is when they talk about jobs and they tell me I have a company who's coming, those jobs, I don't have people who are qualified or trained to take on those jobs. And so as I look at economic development, I have to focus on not just what sounds good to the state and what sounds good that we have them there, but what will help the people of Petersburg to find it. But before I can even put them in jobs, they've now been 10 years without work. And so I've got to go back and retrain and recultivate them into the workforce so that they can actually move in that fashion. The final, as he talks about, is a crime. Crime is an issue. When you have unemployment, you have low incomes, you have low education, crime is the next thing that happens. And so what we're seeing happen in our community, I spent last Saturday looking at a 16-year-old shot dead in the street. 3 days before, 5 children shot in the street. And so I'm seeing these things happen, but they're all a focus of some of the things that we see happening. And so I see a lot of social issues happening in my community. We are one of those cities that they say is definitely in crisis. And as I start looking at my workforce in the city, I can't recruit and retain people because they hear the rumors, they hear the reputation. Who wants to work in Detroit? Because there are things happening in Detroit, and Petersburg is another Detroit. And so as I look at my biggest challenge is I have jobs available. Not only can I, when I get people, can I retain them, and are they ready to put in the hard work? And so we're seeing our workforce aging out. Our young people who graduate from high school, they go to Virginia State and they get far, far away. And so we've got to figure out how to keep these folks home and make that transition into recruiting people to come and be part of our community.
As I look around the auditorium, there are a number of students here tonight, and after hearing a large amount of the challenges and issues that you're facing, I would like for you to talk about the opportunities and why they would want to sit in your seat, because public service, although challenging and has a number of issues, there's great opportunity when you're making a difference. So can you talk about why it is it's important that we advocate that we need the next generation of leaders in the seat where you are today?
It's absolutely vital. As some of us have stated earlier, I think we've got a looming crisis in terms of public service. A lot of folks are aging out and quickly, and but those service requirements are not going to go away. Obviously, the digital age that we live in, there'll be robots and this and that, but it's still going to require a lot of people to provide people-related services. So what I try to tell young people is work as hard as you can and as smart as you can to develop the right skill set to go with the right mindset, and you can make a hell of a difference in local government or in public service in general. The right skill set with the right mindset, there are numerous opportunities to make a difference in terms of individuals' lives, communities' lives, and to be fulfilled as a result of that. So it's tremendous opportunity to make a difference. You can make a difference under the right circumstances.
David?
There's not a better job in the world. And it sounded a little flippant, but that's the way I feel. There is no better job in the world. You impact people's lives every day. It could be as mundane as picking up the garbage, but if you don't do that well, right, that ruins somebody's day. And then we deal with some of the most complex public policy problems in the world. And so if you like challenges, right, then solve mobility, solve poverty, solve crime, solve education. Those are incredibly complex and interrelated issues, and it takes smart, energetic curious young people to help us do that. Because as you can tell, we haven't solved those problems yet, right? But there is no better job in helping people in public service.
So I'm not going to tell you it's the best job in the world. I'm going to tell you it's a job, it's something that you have to have a passion for, but if you don't do it, who will? When I went into local government, my mother worked in local government. And what I saw from her experience in local government is many decisions are made. And if we're not sitting at the table, those decisions will impact our grandmothers, our children, our families. And so it's not just a job, it's an obligation. And so going into public service, there are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days, there are going to be days that you just want to go home and wonder why you've done what you've done. But what happens when you're not at the table? If we see what's happening down our national politics, we see what happens when we're not at the table. In city governments, when I talk about Petersburg and letting the factories, those factories were where the African Americans worked. They didn't just let those factories go away. They thought that the African Americans would go away. And they didn't. And so when decisions are made, whether it's economic development, social, educational, testing, and those things, if you're not at the table, someone will be, and they may not have the best interest of you, your family, your sisters, your children in place. And so it's our responsibility not to walk away from it, even in the bad days, but to be there at the table and to be outspoken. And that's why we have to be here.
I agree with what my other panelists said. You do have to have a passion for this work, and it can be the best job you ever had, depending on the day you woke up and what you dealt with that day. And it can be the worst job, or at least you fundamentally question why you did this work. But the key, I think, is the ability to really meaningfully, directly, and in oftentimes quickly impact somebody's life, a community, a block, a neighborhood, a senior, right? I mean, there are things that we do in government, and the things that I think about and what gets me through the more difficult days are those things that I think about we were able to do that improved somebody's condition. And not just for a moment, but there are decisions that we make that have generational impact in areas of education, in housing, in community development, in economic development, in workforce development. And the beautiful thing about, I tell people all the time, the thing that I enjoy the most about public service is the same thing that frustrates me the most about public service, and that is the diversity of the work that we do. It is a challenging job, but you have the opportunity to put your hands in so many different things. And I can't think of another organization that I think employs just about every kind of thing one can do. IT, lawyers, accountants. We have forensic chemists that work in the District of Columbia, teachers, social workers, biologists, policy people, doctors, nurses, social workers, whatever it is that one wants to do, there probably is a role for that in local government. And when you bring all of that together to be able to make communities better, fundamentally make communities and cities better, it is the most rewarding thing that I think you can do with your time and your career, and it is time well spent. I probably work more in my job than any other single activity that I do. And so the fact that I'm spending so much time doing it means that I really got to like and appreciate and derive some sense of purpose for the work that I do every day. And so I think if that is where your value set is, and you're interested in making a difference in people's lives and building better communities, there's no better place to do it than in local government.
When we think about technology and its impact on cities and government in general across the country, I'll be curious to know how has social media, because as I reflect back 20 years ago, it's totally different than how it is today, but how has social media changed how you lead or manage your team, community, stakeholders, and establish relationships with your council?
I remember, I smile because I think of this story. When I first started in Greensboro, North Carolina, it's around 2009, there was a weekly newspaper that called what I thought was just this, introductory interview, and one of his first questions was, "How did I feel about blogs?" I said, that's not real news. I don't blog. Like, who? And I think for a month they wrote about how the new city manager had no respect for the blogging community. It was this new way of engagement and interaction that I wasn't quite familiar with. And so the social media has just fundamentally changed how we do. I have a mayor. The first thing she does in the morning and the last thing she does at night is look at Twitter and sends me these tweets or these direct messages about things that she sees on Twitter. Now, I barely use Twitter, and in fact, I don't even know the password to get into my Twitter account. But it drives policy. It drives what we do for the day, because there was some constituent, community, or stakeholder that tweeted something, or there's some blog group or chat group of a neighborhood that started talking about something in the chat room that now the government is activated about. And that's a big change to how I think business was normally done. So how we communicate and manage through or respond to issues is in a large way driven by what's happening on social media.
So social media has taken over the city of Petersburg. Every decision we make, everything I do on a daily basis evolves around a Facebook. It's called Clean Sweep Petersburg. They won't even let any members on. My son has a false identity that he checks it with every day, and he'll say, "Mom, did you fire somebody?" They basically tell us what to do on a daily basis. Council members, they actually link on some of the members of the press if they want to talk about an issue. My grass cutting schedule, it doesn't matter. It depends on who said something on social media. That's where I'm cutting grass. Or if I have an issue with an employee, I find out more about an employee on Facebook and Twitter than I do. And so the problem isn't that, it's that we become a reactionary government. We've lost our ability to plan, to think out, to make decisions based on what we would traditionally do, but now it's based on what social media. And so what I call it is we've created a group of social media activists, some people who found a sense of importance based on being able to share and influence policy, because they are influencing policy now. And so our policies now are driven by our social media sites, and how we get away from that is that we've got to learn how to work with it. It's the same as newspaper. We were just talking about propaganda during World War II. It's no different than how they communicated to get things pushed forward. And so those are our new advocacy. So what I've found is that I can't try to deny it exists. I can't pretend it's happening, but what I've got to figure out how to do is to make sure that I'm not letting it drive me versus I'm driving it. And so governments now are looking at how do we hire people who specialize in social media. And that's going to be the only way, because it's not going away. It's getting stronger by the day.
How involved are your 85% likely in social media?
So they have, Concerned Citizen has about 2,300 people on it. And it is not. They are part of it, but they're not leading it. They're not leading the discussion. And sometimes I wonder, are they watching and listening to what the discussions are really saying? It is that 15% driving that social media, and they're affecting everything we do, whether it's cutting the grass at my Confederate cemetery versus cutting the grass on my streets. It's driving all of it. And so what we're having to do is to try to remind people that this social media is not necessarily about you. These are folks who have another agenda, and they're using their agenda to push forth other change in our city.
So I just want to offer this to get a reaction from the young people. So when I started in the workplace, there was no voicemail. and there was no computer on the desk. No email. So, you know, part of this is just as technology evolves over time. But it really is this social media, and we have a mayor, there's some people who are forward, she does Twitter town halls, right, where the only town hall meeting is done over Twitter, right, and back and forth. But And so you have to have the folks that can use the technology to the benefit of the organization. So it's not just a curse to the organization. It's I've seen the software that Red Cross uses during an emergency in social media is often more accurate than 911 in getting pictures, in getting at the ground information. And so social media is also a technology that could benefit local government, and we've just got to figure out how to get smart young people to harness the social media to our advantage.
Harry, I want to end with you, and then we're going to open it up to see if there are any questions in the audience, and then we'll conclude.
Okay, I'll be quick because I think my fellow panelists really nailed everything right on the head. It makes our jobs much more difficult and challenging. As has been said, it creates a reactive environment. Now, there's a lot of fake news, for sure. True fake news. But what it's also doing is forcing us to become more creative and innovative in terms of how we communicate with our superiors, to try to get out in front of it or to respond to it almost in real time terms. When my first year as city manager, we have something, and I'm quite sure my colleagues here, they've got something similar, an FYI memo that I will send to council and the mayor when it's something that is worthy of it, not routine stuff. I think my first year I sent out 243 FYI memos to the mayor and the council. This past year, I sent out about 370. But a lot of that is being driven by social media, because we've got to set the record straight as quickly as possible so that they understand exactly the details and what's behind whatever this fake news is, to alleviate questions. And sometimes it might be 12 midnight that something pops up, and I automatically will send a text message to the mayor and the city council, just because I don't want them sleeping on it and waking up and ruining my entire day. But anyway, that's pretty much it.
Audience, any questions that you may have for the panelists? Any questions? Go ahead.
I have one. As public administration practitioners, in terms of nuts and bolts, what type of knowledge, skills, and abilities should we encourage our students to bring on the table so that
what skills and abilities are necessary to prepare the students for the job interview or for the job?
I think what I try to stress to young people who come to me for mentoring is I say, do and work on whatever is going to develop the quality of your thinking, in terms of your critical thinking skills, because that will translate into your communication skills. You can't write good, you can't talk good if you don't think good. So you got to focus on the head first. I tell them to focus on. Everybody wants to be a city manager. I mean, I just spoke to a 25-year-old 3 days ago. Well, I want to be a city manager. Like that's going to happen tomorrow. I say this is a very difficult and challenging thing to achieve. Requires some luck. Actually, requires a lot of luck. But you have to work on certain skills. Soft skills, obviously, and soft skills that will only come with time and experience. You know, your emotional intelligence skills, your environmental awareness skills, situation awareness skills. But you want to focus on some of the hard stuff as well. Writing and analytical skills. I tell young people, whatever you're majoring in, if your school, if your university has any kind of analytics curriculum, it could be, you know, math or statistics, but particularly analytics. Take a couple classes or minor in it. We have a lot of Fortune 500 corporate headquarters in Cincinnati. And one of them, it's not quite a Fortune 500 yet, but it will be. It's called 8451. They do all of the data analytics for Kroger, Target, most of the retail organizations across the country, and I had coffee with the CEO, and I said, what's your ideal prototypical entry-level person? He says that person doesn't exist yet, but the most ideal would be a person who majored in anthropology and minored in analytics or statistics. Understanding behavior, cultures, etc. And he says, I said, well, where do you get most of your entry-level people from? He says, University of Alabama. I said, that's interesting. I said, how did that happen? Well, they set up a program specifically for us. But anyway, analytics is becoming very critical. Analytics will impact and be a part of everything we do, everything that they do. So mixing some of that into whatever your public policy, urban planning, whatever you're studying. But again, focus on thinking skills, which lead to effective communication skills, particularly writing and speaking.
So I'm a big believer in the critical thinking too, and then I would say look for curious people. That people that are curious about solving problems, and if you're curious, then you're into the questions, right? And to me, it's always good if you're asking questions, right? Seek first to understand. Can you then break down a problem? Can you break down a situation? And you do that, I think, with a curious mind and with thoughtful questions.
From an interview standpoint, what I look for is people who've done their homework. I've had a lot of positions to fill, and one of the things that I find frustrating is when people show up and they don't know anything about the organization. And we take it for granted that people, you go to an interview, you've read the job description, but you don't know the history. And part of it is, what questions do they ask me? Because their questions tell me a lot about what they think of the organization and what they're trying. The other thing that I think is important and that you have to have is a plan. So when you come into a job interview, it's, so what are you going to do your first 90 days? What are you going to do your first 30 days? What is your plan in that position? It may even be as an executive assistant. Your plan may be to organize something. But those are the things that we're looking for. Writing is important, and understanding. Education will get you everywhere you need to get, but it's not going to get the job. What's going to get the job is your ability to not only sell yourself, but sell your value to that organization. And how do you fit into that organization? Because fit, you can have an MBA, a master's, a PhD, and a law degree. But if you're not a fit for that organization, it's not going to work. And so you've got to do your background and understand if that organization is right for you. And you've got to show how you fit into where that organization is trying to go. And that happens from doing your background and understanding who the organization is, what are the needs they have as you were marketing yourself, and how do you sell yourself to that organization.
Sean?
I wouldn't add anything different. Critical thinking, writing, the soft skills are really important. I usually think that people who make application for a job have some baseline in the foundation of the work, and so then what I'm looking for is fit and finish and the ability to sort of think critically and discover new things.
We had a student question in the back there.
Say that again.
I'm going to ask you to say it again and give you the mic, okay?
I said, what are the best communicative procedures you guys use to keep long-term pressing plans focused?
The best communicative procedures to keep long-term plans focused. I run a big organization, and so there's stuff going on all over the place. We have 70 mayoral agencies and 35,000 employees, and so to know to kind of monitor what's important, you got to have some sort of system or framework in place. And so what we do is, I don't know if it's really a communicative procedure, but we have procedures in place where we can monitor, track, and understand if we're on target with the things that we commit to do. So every agency develops a work plan that speaks to what their priorities and strategies are for the year, including how we measure their success, right? If you said you would do A, B, and C, how do we know that that actually had the impact that we thought it was supposed to solve the problem that we thought we were solving? And so every quarter I meet with each cluster of our government. We have 6 clusters, like education, public safety, government operations, health and human services, et cetera. So I meet with each cluster and I go through the agency's top line work plans. What are your strategies? Are you on point? Where are you deviating? Where you are on your budget marks? What do your performance measures look like? Are you hitting your metrics? To the question asked earlier about contract spending and minority spending, we have a goal in DC as well, and so I look at the performance of each agency relative to their goal with spending with DC-based businesses, and we talk about any deviations. And so every quarter they know they're coming to see me, and we're going to review where they are in their process, and if we're off track, we're going to get on track. And that leads then to individual meetings that I have with certain agencies where I think they need a little extra attention and focus to get where I need them to be.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, go ahead, Vic.
Just as with Rashad in DC, I mean, obviously we all track metrics, we have stat programs, we have innovation labs, but at the end of the day, with all of that sophisticated stuff, it boils down to really just one thing. And that one thing is the relentless pursuit of follow-up. That's it.
That's right. That's right. That's the best answer here. That's right.
Questions? Okay, we're going to end with one last question, and that question is, if you were not a city manager, what would you be doing today?
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and answer that first. If I was not city manager, I would be absolutely miserable.
You know, I struggle with that. Let's say feeding my family wasn't an issue, and I could pick anything that I wanted to do. You know, I think I actually would want to own a restaurant. I love to cook. You would do that with me? We'll get a business. I love to cook, so I'd own a restaurant. Yeah.
So for me, I spent about a little over a year in transition, and what I found fulfilling was training and teaching, because I found that the interaction and the feedback you get from others is very fulfilling. The more you talk to people and help folks to learn from you. So if I was not a city manager, I'd want to be teaching public policy.
I was going to say the same thing with a little twist, though. I'd be Cy Murray's sidekick.
We had to get some instructions from our chapter president, but I wanted to take this time because one of the things our local chapter is doing is trying to engage our emerging leaders. We have our emerging leaders chairperson here, and she wanted to share with you an upcoming event that she wants to, I think they're really trying to engage our master's program at U of H in here, so I want LaToya Ricketts, if she would, to tell you real briefly about that, and we'll conclude the presentation.
Good evening. This has been a very great, lively discussion this evening. I just want to take this opportunity to let the students here know that we in the BPA will be hosting an Emerging Leaders Symposium in the forthcoming months. We will be honoring Barbara Jordan. And so we're going to talk about many of the topics that we've discussed here tonight, but in further detail. We will be offering scholarships to students here at TSU as well as students of U of H. So please look forward to that event in January. Speak to your professors as the information will be forthcoming. Thank you.
Are there any parting words from the panelists before we conclude this panel discussion?
I do.
Okay, Cy. You still got to tell folks who Cy is, but no, it's just been a pleasure being here. It's always good to be in a familiar place. School of Public Administration. As I said earlier, these schools are going to become even more critical and important in the coming years. So,
best of luck. There's lots of work to do.
Anthony and I were some 20-something like years ago. And we were graduate students. We were introduced to NFBPA as graduate students, and we stayed the course. It's Rashad and some of us who started out together, and it's been fulfilling, and it's worthwhile. And I think that you have to stay strong to that and believe that this is a good field. The National Forum for Black Public Administrator has meant the world to me, to Anthony, and to those who have been raised in this organization. And I hope you'll find the value that we find it and see that it's worthwhile.
To the students, to students who are sort of contemplating their next step, I just say, go where your passion takes you. People ask me a lot, what's the way to be a city manager, to be a public sector administrator, an executive, a leader? I should say a manager, because leader is not by position. It's about the work that you do. But follow your passion, because success comes for things that you are good at, that you believe in, that don't feel like work. And so whatever that path is, you're going to be whatever the thing is that you like, that you love, that you have drive for, you're going to be the best at it. You're going to be noticed for it. You're going to stand above people that are otherwise doing it, because you're committed to it, and you will find success will flourish from following what you are passionate about doing.
Well, Dr. King once said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't run, no, if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, just keep moving forward. And that's what I think I've shared that with my employees, and I share that with you. Keep moving forward. A lot of people ask me, why do you have so much passion for public service? The reason I have passion is because I see every single day that we make a difference. There's only so many professions, as I shared with the folks today, that touch the day-to-day lives of people. And to me, if that doesn't get you excited to get up and make a difference, that you can turn your community around in a positive way, I don't know what can. So we want to thank TSU for pulling this together and allowing us to be here. And we challenge you to be even greater than who we are, because we're turning it over to you. You're the next generation of excellence that we expect in public service. Doctor, do you want to conclude with any final?
Just on behalf of Dean Dr. Michael Adams, really thank everyone for being here. The students who stayed over, we really appreciate you for being here, and the city managers, city administrators. I haven't been a public official myself. It is truly a joy being a public official and serving, like I said, my students. Our single most purpose is the health and the general welfare of the public, and then we serve those. We've done a good job. Thank you again very much. And everyone drive safely as you leave our Texas Southern. Thanks again.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you so much. And Dr. Sylvester Murray is the Dean of NFBPA and other things. He's a professor emeritus. But we have a panel tomorrow, 2 panels, 1 to 3:30 at the Marriott, and then 1 from 3:30 to 5 with several city managers at the Sugar Land City Hall. So we hope that you can come out and join us. Thank you so much.